Yesterday, Uvalde parents called for the resignation of School District Police Chief Peter Arredondo, the officer who was in charge of the police response to the tragic massacre at Robby Elementary. Just this morning, Texas public safety officials confirmed that officers on the scene could have stopped the gunman within 3 minutes after he entered the school and condemned the police response as an abject failure.
Surveillance video from inside Robby Elementary, exclusively obtained by KVUE and its news partners at the Austin American-Statesman, shows multiple Uvalde police officers standing inside the building with rifles and at least one ballistic shield in the minutes after Salvador Ramos entered the building.
The city of Uvalde has hired a private law firm to argue it does not have to release public records of the shooting, including footage from inside the school. And this is every update to this story is just more demoralizing than the one before it. But this is very key. And so yesterday we reported that it's possible they didn't even try the door, that it was unlocked and they didn't try it. Now, so we're seeing in this footage that ballistic shield is a very key piece of equipment to have to confront the shooter. Because yes, it is a dangerous situation. He has a very powerful gun. He did fire at 2 police officers when they had tried to enter and he grazed them. So yes, I get it. They don't want to just go in there and get shot. That is what the training calls for. The training says you're supposed to go in there and get shot, and then maybe you get shot, but the guy behind you gets shot, but the guy behind him makes it and takes out the shooter. But now we're learning that very early on, not 75 minutes later, but like immediately, they have that shield. So that guy goes in first with the shield, and then somebody's following and shoots the shield. Like that absolutely makes it even more unfathomable, even more outrageous and cowardly that they didn't do anything for over an hour. Yeah,
I don't know what lawyer can spin this. I don't know. I mean, obviously they're going to hire legal counsel to protect themselves, but as their counsel, I don't know. I don't know how you get out of this one.
It depends what the FOIA rules are there, right? I mean, they're different in every state. Sometimes it's easier to get documents. Sometimes it's harder.
It seems to me that there's going to be any number of lawsuits around this event. And brought by any number of people, including the parents of the kids that were killed and the teacher and the families of the teachers that were killed. And the idea that they would obtain documents during that discovery process and not eventually get them to the public.
Got it.
We're gonna find out.
Got it.
We're gonna find out one way or the other, and it's not gonna look good. I really hope that something good comes of this. I mean, we were talking, in another segment about potential gun reform and the debates that are happening and whether or not this bipartisan gun reform bill has any chance of actually going anywhere. And look, I am open, and I said this in a previous radar, I am open to a lot of different kinds of interventions that could potentially stop something like this happening in the future. But the idea of doing nothing when we've seen this level of incompetence from the police, and for there to be still people who are calling for increased funding when we saw this community had a SWAT team and every resource at their disposal, and that people were standing outside of the door armed with those resources, with all the protections in the world that you could want, ballistic shields and the like, and still perhaps didn't even try the door.
They had a SWAT team.
And a SWAT team?
Yeah. They had their own, this is something that sometimes gets missed. This is a police department for this school district. They have their own police force, a well-trained police force, and a well-funded one, one that is certainly adequately funded.
Yeah.
And the school resource officers wasn't there, confronted the wrong person. Fine. Didn't get the job done, just waited. Border Patrol had to do it. Fine. Harassed, held back, arrested, handcuffed parents. One of the parents who did get free had time to go in, get her children out, come back. It's just incredible. It's really, really bad.
I'd be curious to know how much of the conversation in Congress is highlighting the incompetence of the police right now, because I haven't noticed very many elected officials, presumably Democrats, really using this moment to call into question the logic behind throwing funding at police departments as a way to prevent crime or to, best intervene when crimes are in progress. It seems like this is the time for the case to be made, but despite all of the blame that happens in the Democratic Party that the defund movement was acted upon, and that's why crime is rising, and that's why Democrats are going to fail in the fall, That hasn't been the case.
Now
There's only been more police funding since the defund.
Now would be
movement.
a great moment for a handshake moment between, defund the police progressives on one hand and public employees suck and are the problem people on the other hand, because this was bad.
Yeah, I don't know if I want to make quite that devil's bargain.
My hand's over here, Briahna.
At the very least.
My hand.
At the very least, I think progressives should be using this moment to push back against conservative Democrats, corporate Democrats, who've been blaming them for all of their losses and have been trying to attribute the defund movement, which didn't actually result in any policy changes at the federal level, for their own personal failures, and to say, look, this is a winning argument for us. What happened in Uvalde was really galling, and we should figure out how to actually address these kinds of things and not let Republicans get away with pretending.
And pro-police Republicans need to confront the fact that militarizing police did not work. It hasn't worked. Militarizing schools has not worked.
Yeah. Or militarizing the police.
Right. Militarizing the police, also bad, but making schools more like prisons does not work in cases like this if the actual police employees you have are incompetent cowards.
Yeah.
So, fix this. This is not going to work. It's so scandalous, and but you still hear from some Republicans saying, well, what if they had more? I don't know. What if more police resources?
We got to arm the teachers.
What are we going to put moats and alligators around these schools? It's not realistic. It's not realistic. Now, so I'm actually I'm fine with arming teachers. I don't think the teachers should be required to be armed. I think if teachers, you're going to disagree with me, most people who own weapons use them responsibly, know how to use them, don't shoot anyone wrongly. That's the case of 99.9% of people who have guns. So if a teacher wants to be armed, I don't see a problem with it. I don't think
do you
it's necessarily a solution to this problem. But
do you remember your kindergarten teacher?
My kindergarten teacher would probably not have wanted to have a gun, but well,
let's say your fourth grade teacher, since that's what we're talking about in Uvalde. Do you remember your fourth grade teacher's name?
I remember all of my teachers' names. My fourth grade teacher was Ms. Trent.
Do you think Ms. Trent should be at the shooting range learning how to handle an AK and keep it locked up in the drawer of her?
There are old ladies who can use guns proficiently.
Hey, this isn't about her being old or lady. I don't know anything about this person. All I was asking is, do you think she's the person who should be in a position to, whip out a Glock and defend the classroom? Scenario?
I do not think it will make much of a difference.
Are we going to pay her more
mass
to get
shootings
gun
are
training?
total? But I don't fear responsible.
Are we going to fund schools more?
I don't fear responsible, law-abiding people having access to firearms, because in almost all cases they use them responsibly.
Yeah, well, unfortunately, a lot of responsible
You don't want your fourth grade teacher, as long as your fourth grade teacher is not a deranged person, which they shouldn't be if they're your fourth grade teacher.
Well, this is what's so funny, is that not you, but so many conservatives are arguing that teachers are a problem. All these blue-haired, cringy teachers want to, tell kids about drag queens and sex and da-da-da. It's like, which do you want? You can't have it both ways.
Well, right.
Are
a lot
these
of that
people
is moral
incompetence?
Panic,
competence ruining children, or are they people that you want to arm?
Right.
And also, do you trust teachers not to be using their guns inappropriately when there's disruptions in the classroom? Is this going to be?
I trust everyone, and there are legitimate reasons for a older person, for a woman to want to own a gun if they live in maybe part of the country where they feel unsafe, walking to the car, or walking to the grocery store, or in the parking garage. It's all fine.
Don't impute your bias onto me that I have something against older women having guns. That's not my issue at all.
Okay.
It's that having guns, being a responsible gun owner, doesn't come out of the heaven like manna from God. You have to have training and learn to be that. And are we going to fund teachers to have that training? Are we going to fund schools to buy guns, which are not cheap? Are we going to have more administrative state to go through the permitting process to control for all of these things? What happens when the first teacher makes a joke about how you need to sit down, Trevor, or else I'm going to pull out my gun? What kind of environment are we creating in schools? We need to have that conversation seriously if we're going to back that kind of policy.
I'm not saying it's a solution. I'm saying that if teachers want to do that, just like any other responsible, law-abiding citizen, they can and would use firearms in a benign way. Which is the common experience with firearms. We hear about the extreme cases where something really bad happens with some crazy person. I don't think it's going to be an answer to the question, but I'm not afraid of it. Some liberals act like, all the kids will be shot all the time. No, of course not. If people have guns.
No, I think it's more
Already.
likely that we'll see an increase in teacher suicides and things like that, because that's the thing that's correlated most with gun ownership is higher suicide rates and things like that, like you get in the state of Wyoming. But
well, that's a different thing. That's not a thing that can be. That's not a thing that can be solved by just like taking all the guns from people. Like we're not.
No one wants to take all the guns from people. Some people would argue you just shouldn't give them to teachers.
I know. I don't know why teachers are not different than any other employee.
And their individual
category
capacity
of person. Their
is
individual
fine.
capacity, if they want to
in
have
school,
guns.
in the desk drawer next to the Crayola markers and the construction paper, I think is the concern people have.
All right. Well, we'll have more rising after this.